Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls, and you're listening to Rainbow Country.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, the Church of Fabulosity, bringing more joy and fabulosity to the world. That and more in episode 388, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat
Girls. You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's gay and lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #1 LGBT podcast on feedspot.com. So today, launched in July 2023, the Church of Fabulosity, bringing more joy and fabulosity to the world. And essentially what the Church of Fabulosity does is they provide ordinations for ministers, and they currently have 40 ministers in 8 states. Joining me to talk about the Church of Fabulosity is the founder and president, Minister Lala. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some 80s gay club hits, some queer electronic, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 388 through Rainbow Country, and our first stop, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. Today, queer women have always existed. Let's put them back in the history books. No, they weren't just friends. Author Christy Lowe reads from her book, A History of Queer Women, which is available wherever you get your favorite books. And by the way, on Amazon.ca, the book has a rating of 4.6 out of 5 stars.
Lesbians have always been great at creating spaces for themselves. Take Polish immigrant Eva Kochiva, who in 1925 opened lesbian tea room Eve's Hangout in Greenwich Village, New York. Eve's Hangout was everything you would expect from a Greenwich Village lesbian tea room. There were regular poetry readings, dramatic musical presentations, intense group discussions, cat chat, sex chat, and tea chat. Eva also included men and had a sign on the door that said men are admitted but not welcome. And people say lesbians aren't funny. The bar was successful, but because a successful lesbian is a threat to humanity, the police ransacked the joint. During the raid, the police found Eva's collection of lesbian-centred sexual stories. Eva tried to pretend that they weren't anything to do with lesbianism, but the book's name, Lesbian Love, gave it away. Eva was arrested and charged with obscenity and disorderly conduct. She was deported back to Poland, but somehow managed to make her way to France, where she opened another lesbian tea room that was equally successful. Not long after, the Nazis invaded France. They didn't like Eva, or her successful lesbian tea room. She would be murdered along with thousands of other lesbians in Auschwitz. Just like today, dildos were a common accessory among queer women, only then they weren't as veiny. What's the deal with that? Italian stallion Caterina Vitani was known to carry a leather dildo between her legs and used it to bed over 100 women. Caterina began her bid for top shagger at just 14 years old when she fell in love with her embroidery teacher. The affair lasted for 2 years until the embroidery teacher's father caught them in bed. The father threatened to have Caterina arrested, so she left town and reinvented herself as Giovanni Bodoni. Giovanni was just as charming as Caterina and soon built up a reputation as a serial seducer. That is until she fell in love with the niece of a local minister. Giovanni wanted to marry her, but the minister forbid them from being together due to Giovanni's raunchy reputation. The couple didn't care and decided to get married in secret without the minister's blessing. Unfortunately for Giovanni, the minister found out before they could be married and shot Giovanni in the leg. In the hospital, minutes from death, Giovanni asked for a nun to come to her bed. She then confessed that she had been born a woman and wished to be buried in women's clothing. After Caterina, Giovanni's death, a surgeon attempted to find an explanation for what he called those who followed the practices of Sappho. First, he removed the hymen, then the clitoris, followed by the fallopian tubes, the intestines, the liver, and the gallbladder. He then examined them all closely, making sure to use all his expertise and knowledge in the field of biology. And what did he find? Absolutely fuck all. Over in Colombia, Tatiana de la Tierra helped form one of the first international Latina lesbian magazines in the world. Tatiana wanted to empower Latina lesbians through writing and encourage them to challenge social norms. For example, one of her poems, Ode to Unsavory Lesbians, was designed to poke fun at heteronormative societal perceptions of beauty and ugliness, which worked because it's hilarious. Ode to Unsavory Lesbians. I love an ugly lesbian, one who walks with a limp, talks with a lisp, leaves her dentures out overnight by the bathroom sink, wears polyester pants and men's cologne, the cheap kind, has a beard so long she steps on it, sprouts warts on her toes, all 12 of them, carries a spittoon in her breast pocket, chortles at church people. Tatiana also wanted to include non-heterosexual material in the school curriculum. She believed that this would help prevent homophobia in the classroom, as well as educating students on the concept of identity. What a great idea, said nobody, because even today it's a struggle to find anything queer on the school syllabus. Before the AIDS epidemic, gay men and lesbians were often at loggerheads for their political and social differences. Many lesbians resented gay men for being the face of their community, believing them to be sex-crazed cokeheads swanning about in their tank tops, driven by the meat between their legs just like straight men. The feeling was mutual, with screams of "fish" ringing through the room whenever a lesbian walked into a gay bar. It shouldn't be funny, but the idea that someone would shout "fish" at me the moment I step foot in a gay bar really makes me laugh. When AIDS came along, everything changed. Lesbians volunteered to help look after the men who had been left alone in their hospital beds to die. They watched as hundreds and hundreds of young men crawled into the hospital, only to be diagnosed with something that they had never heard of and thrown back out. In a couple of months they would return to die or be used as guinea pigs. To make matters worse, there was a shortage of blood, because gay men had been banned from donating. But, once again, the lesbians stepped up and volunteered their services. One of these lesbians was Barbara Vick, who struck up a deal with a private San Diego blood bank that let donors designate who would receive their blood donations. The San Diego Blood Sisters soon set to work and over the next 5 years organised several blood drives. Barbara knew that although lesbians weren't at the forefront of the disease, they had to do everything in their power to help those who had suffered. There was no longer a divide between gay men and lesbians, it was now an attack on the community. But it wasn't just lesbians who got involved. Meetings to discuss the epidemic were put together by various groups throughout the community. All sorts of lives, all sorts of races, sexualities, genders. There was no time for animosity, no time for separatism, politics, or agendas. Everybody had a role, and everybody needed to do their part. So they did. To this day, no apology has ever been made to the LGBTQIA+ community, and in 2016, Hillary Clinton tried praising the Reagans for their handling of the epidemic, saying, "Because of both President and Miss Reagan, in particular Miss Reagan, we started a national conversation when nobody would talk about it, nobody wanted to do anything about it." Not only a huge, great, stinking lie, this also served to erase the thousands and thousands of activists who actually did talk about it while nobody was doing anything to help. Look, I like you, Hillary, really, I do. You should have been president, but spare us the bullshit.
Up next, the Church of Fabulosity.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Minister Lala, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Actually, I'm doing fabulous.
I have to say thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, Minister Lala, the fabulous Minister Lala, especially to talk about the Church of Fabulosity. I like to start my interviews from the ground up. The basics. Okay. So talk to me about the Church of Fabulosity and what is the Church of Fabulosity? Let's start there on the ground level. What is this church? The Church of Fabulosity.
Well, if we want to start with the legal aspects of it, we are a recognized 501c3 non-profit religious organization according to the federal government of the United States. You can actually go out to the Internal Revenue Service and look us up, and we are a recognized charity. We are also incorporated in the state of Utah. So that's the legal pieces of it, right? The fun pieces. But really, when we were talking about the Church of Fabulosity or actually just this concept of what it means, it was really looking at our own personal lives. And really, when I say our, I do refer to my husband and some our closer friends that actually became part of the board that launched this. But really, it came around a lot of the pieces from my own experience in life. And, I was born and raised in the Mormon church. I was a former Mormon missionary. Spirituality and religion's always been part of my life, but I never really truly believed in a whole religious piece. And right now I'm sort of agnostic. But as I started coming out and I started looking at myself and started realizing what I was made up of, there was just moments in my life where I just experienced this pure joy. Once I was able to come out and start understanding who I was and let myself and allow myself to finally experience joy and happiness. And so over the years, as I've been thinking about this, I've believed it and everything, but then within the last year or two, as I've started seeing a lot of negativity in this world, a lot of attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, I started thinking this is something that we need to start sharing. We need to put down into words, and we need to start looking at this, because I believe that the LGBTQ community, we have an internal fabulousness that belongs to us that we need to learn to celebrate and unleash and recognize and feel fully capable of expressing that. Now, some of us do, but not a lot of us do. So sat down, started putting thoughts on paper, like what is this? And the word fabulous just kept coming into my mind as I was writing this down, because I do believe that as humans in general, LGBTQ or our allies or even our non-allies, we all have a divine birthright as part of the human experience of being born on this earth, whether you're a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, whoever you are. There's this one unique piece that transcends and goes across boundaries of religion, and that is to be happy, feel fabulous, and to take others along for that ride and uplift the community. So that's really where it started. And I started putting it on paper, and I was like, this is really a spiritual experience. It truly is, because whether you believe you have a spirit or a soul or a chakra or an energy, or you're just a bunch of DNA that's pulled together over evolution, our experience right now is a spiritual experience. It goes deeper into us than just a physical experience. Does that make sense?
A couple things. Okay, so did you say that you are agnostic?
I am agnostic right now.
Okay. So the Church of Fabulosity, is this a church in the conventional sense of the word? Is this a building where people come to worship in whatever way, shape, or form? Is this a church in that sense?
No, it's not. It is actually, it's an online church. And if you go to our website, the Church of Fabulosity, but just churchoffabulosity.org, we have all our beliefs and tenets. We believe that you don't need to be in an actual physical building to do this. There's no place to go actually worship, because it's a non-denominational organization. Everybody is welcome. We're not trying to say that any religion's wrong or right, or that you have to give up your beliefs, because, like I said, this transcends religious beliefs. This transcends everything. And so while we're not a physical church, we're not necessarily a traditional church in that sense of the word, because this is still a spiritual experience. Whatever that belief is why we have settled on the Church of Fabulosity.
So why the word church in there? Because when you say church of anything, you kind of have a concept, an idea, because the word church is there. So I'm curious why you have that word in there if it's not necessarily a place, although you say and because of COVID, a lot of quote unquote churches have online services now. You just log on and you can be part of that service. So why the use of that word? Talk to me about that.
We wanted to use the word church because we feel that it's bringing together a community. It's bringing together a community of people that wants to celebrate this thing we call fabulosity, to spread joy, to uplift others. And so by bringing it together as a community, it does act as a church. in that sense because it pulls everybody together under one umbrella, which is really what a church is. Over the years, churches have become, they become money makers, right? You have your like mega churches that are out there. You have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons with billions of dollars, right? But you also have the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. You have the Universal Life Church, which is another online church, which I've been an ordained minister of the Universal Life Church since 2013, which is how I really got to this place in my life. And it was really, we built the framework of the Church of Fabulosity around the Universal Life Church, which has millions of ministers throughout the world. And it's an online church also without a physical location.
So if you are agnostic, what do you believe then?
I believe that so in my life, I've had too many experiences to say that this is it. There's nothing beyond here. Do I believe necessarily that there's some greater being that's pulling the strings and manipulating us or putting our fates out there and we're all going along to this? I don't. But I do believe that maybe it's our energy that keeps going. Maybe it's the fact that our memories from those of our loved ones that keep us around. And then after so long, after all of them are gone and people don't know who we are and there's no more on the earth that our memory that remember us, then maybe that's when we move on. I don't know. I believe there's something beyond and there's something inside of us. I just don't know what that is. And I don't feel like I have to know that what the next step is or how it's going to happen. I just believe that
do you believe in like a higher power of some sort or anything of that nature? Do you consider yourself spiritual?
I consider myself more spiritual. Like I said, I don't believe that it's necessarily something's out there controlling everything and there's somebody for us to worship. And while we're talking about that, I want to make something clear, like in our beliefs and tenets. I am not considering myself some sort of prophet, seer, or revelator, or any type of prophet in that sense, or being called of God. I am here to facilitate this experience for everybody. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what the board is trying to do, is just make this available to those that want to celebrate it and want to and just start to spread joy and happiness and uplift others. So we're just making that available. So don't want people to think that I'm some spiritual guru that's going to start the next mega church, or that I'm Joseph Smith and I saw God out in the woods. That's not who I am or what I'm trying to portray. We're just here to help facilitate this.
And how many people are involved in the Church of Fabulosity in regards to like I'm not sure what to call, like parishioners essentially?
Well, what our construct is we actually provide ordinations for ministers. So anybody can go out and apply to be a minister. It's actually really simple. It's free. It's a few questions that basically says that you're a legit person and that you're going to live by the tenets of the Church of Fabulosity, and you become a minister. Right now, we just launched in July.
Are you just based in the U.S. right now?
Just right now, we are now. Don't
forget your neighbors up north, girl.
Yes, I know. We want to get out there. Here's the thing that I was looking into is that even in Canada, you should be able to become a minister of the Church of Fabulosity. That should not stop you. What would be the difficult piece is what you could legally do with that. In the United States, our ministers can actually perform marriages. But in Canada, we're not a registered organization out there. So I don't think you can do that, but you could still be a minister. So we're welcoming people from Canada to be ministers, but until we actually get recognized as a legal organization over there, there are some things that you might not be able to do. So
then I take it there's no denomination in regards to the Church of Fabulosity, but do you welcome, every denomination if people have that?
We welcome everybody because happiness and joy is something that transcends no matter what religion you have or lack or non-belief in a religion, right? Because it's something deeper. And we actually look at this as an addition to the to other religious experiences. So we don't we're not out to say we're the only true church or to demean other churches or other beliefs. That's really that's your belief. That's what you want to believe, and that's what you want to follow. And because the Church of Fabulosity has its own beliefs and tenets, we're not trying to take on new definitions or stretch other religions' scriptures or beliefs to try to make us fit in. We're saying this is our beliefs, and it's above and beyond whatever religious belief you have.
Do you think that because of COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything that was going on in those years, you had George Floyd, all that sort of stuff, do you think that impacted you and led you to create the Church of Fabulosity?
I do believe a lot of that had to do with it. I've actually been a leader within the LGBTQ community around DEI and equal rights and stuff. I was actually the global president of a very large company, ERG, during the pandemic and during George Floyd and the racial justice movement. And I think a lot of what's happened is like our world has gotten really negative. Our world has gotten to a point where it's so divided that we can't come together. And it really showed during COVID-19. It really showed the way that people reacted to COVID and how they treated their neighbors and everything. And the racial justice movement really exasperated and brought out a lot of really awful hate and negativity. And it really just, for me, that's what started it. And that's why I was saying it just and then they've been emboldened, and now it's moving on to the LGBTQ community, and it's moving on to the drag community and the transgender community specifically. And
who knew that a drag brunch can be an issue? Who
right?
knew?
Or reading a storybook to children while dressed in drag as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, or whatever character they happen to be dressed as. One of our ministers, our very first drag queen minister, because, and I'll go back to the drag queen minister. We actually are one of the only churches out there that actually affirm and celebrate drag, because one of our core beliefs is that we use self-expression of dress, dance, music, and artistry to celebrate our uniqueness, fabulousness, and our divine birthrights. And that's whether you're a drag queen or not, because I'm looking at you, Mark, and I'm looking at this picture of you, and you look fabulous with your rainbow scarf and your microphone in your hand, right? And it's like that's part of our human experience, is that we should be able to express ourselves no matter what that means. My birthday a couple months ago, I'm not going to tell you how old I just turned, but my birthday a couple months ago, I got out there and I threw on these amazing high heels. They look like Converse tennis shoes, but they had 6-inch spikes. I threw on a feather boa but I was still wearing my
and nothing else.
Oh yeah, no, I was in a public space. But you see me, and I'm pretty sure your listeners aren't going to be able to see me. But for me to be dressed that way is quite the gender bending mind fuckery. I don't know if I can say mind fuck, right? Because you see me. I have a shaved head. I have a full beard. I'm a built guy. And so to be like that, but why should I not be able to do that? Right? Because it made me feel fabulous as I'm out there dancing with my friends and families and celebrating my birthday and just being myself. Right? That's fabulosity. That's what we're trying to get to, because at a certain point in our lives, we as children used to do it all the time. And if you look at children, they experience fabulosity every single day. They can act how they want. They can laugh. They can experience joy. That child that puts on that party dress that they wanted forever twirls in the mirror, and they are so happy and they feel so pretty. And we celebrate that. But at some point, and they're feeling their fabulosity at that point. But at some point in our lives, we're told you can't act that way anymore. That's not how adults act. And you can't do this. You can't do that. You have to have this certain, persona. And same with women, right? Why are we stifling that inner joy and letting it come out? That's stifling our fabulosity. And I think if we actually all did that a lot more, this world would be so much happier. But let me get back to that drag queen, our very first minister drag queen. Her name is Tara Lipsinki. And she's been actually dedicating all her drag shows as a minstrel service of the Church of Fabulosity. Because she believes that as a drag queen and her drag shows, they do what the Church of Fabulosity is trying to do. It's uplifting others. It's spreading joy or happiness, or giving people experiences opportunities to experience joy and happiness by seeing their fabulosity, by joining in on that. But she just wrote a children's book. It's called Letter from the Queen. And she's received death threats. Her drag show has had Proud Boys show up to it. She recently received a bomb threat at one of her drag queen book readings. And recently she was in another place and they threatened to lynch and get a lynch mob out there. It's ridiculous that people are reacting this way.
Why do you think people are reacting in this particular way towards the LGBT community, towards the drag community, the trans community? Why do you think this is happening?
Personally, I feel that it's being used as a form of fear and power. And it's across the board, right? We had a lot of fear and a lot of fear mongering before 2015, right? That, in other countries and everything, Canada, thank you very much. I actually got married in Canada back in 2008, in Victoria, British Columbia. It was amazing. It's on the seaside. Anyways, but because unfortunately the United States does drive a lot of world talk and influences other countries. But before 2015, they had this little thing that they could say that gay marriage is going to do this. It's going to cause this. It's going to cause that. It's going to cause the destruction of the family. It's going to have all this. And they had this little bubble around it. When 2015 came along and the Supreme Court changed that, that bubble burst. Because over the last 8 years, they haven't seen that happening. So all of a sudden, they need something new. They need something new to fight against, to fearmonger with. And so welcome in comes the drag queens and the transgender community. It's something they can rally behind. It's something that, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't knowingly know transgender people. And it's really, they're going after the transgender community. Transgender community is, in a lot of their minds, synonymous with drag, even though they are completely different, even though there are transgender people that are drag queens or drag kings or drag artists. But they're not mutually the same thing, correct? So I think that's a lot of it. So in the United States, we do have the First Amendment, which is the freedom of religion. And as our drag queens and drag artists are actually becoming members of the Church of Fabulosity, and they're dedicating their drag shows and their events as services as a minstrel service of the Church of Fabulosity, it also can be viewed as a protection under the First Amendment.
And on that note, we'll return after this Rainbow Country update.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford, Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Canada's LGBTQ2+ archives just released Out North, an archive of queer activism and kinship in Canada. Order a copy from your local bookstore to dive into hundreds of loud and proud stories and photos of historical queer life in Canada from pre-1939 to today. Get your copy from your local bookstore. Out North, an archive of queer activism and kinship in Canada. So we are well into 2024, and this is actually the second fresh episode of the year. Funny how time flies. By the way, if you would like to be a guest on the show, or maybe you know someone who should be on the show, someone who is in the performing arts, maybe a politician, maybe you have a project that's coming out in 2024 and you want to get the word out, or maybe you're just someone living your best queer life. Well, get in touch with me so you can have your voice be heard. Send me an email, marktaramusic@gmail.com, or hit me up on socials @MarkTara. Come on down and let your voice, your story, be heard.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us, and of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So, Minister Lala, you grew up in Utah, raised Mormon.
Yep.
For yourself, being a gay man, growing up in Utah, being a Mormon, what was that like for you?
You know, it was a mind fuck. You know, I grew up not...
I take it that you knew at an early age that you were gay.
I knew I was different. Mm-hmm. I didn't really put a word on it until I was like 15 or 16 years old. Mm-hmm. When I really started going, oh no, that dream I had last night was not of a girl. Mm-hmm. Right? It was... I started looking back. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a crush when I was in Boy Scouts on that scout leader. Shit. Right. But, you know, I started realizing when I was 15, 16 years old that there was something seriously wrong with me. Or at that point, that we're going to say that at that point, I am so not in that mindset anymore. But at that point, it was wrong. Right. Because in the Mormon church, you know, homosexuality is, especially back then, was very, very looked down upon. It was, you know, they've changed their stance just a little bit, but it's the same bullshit, just packaged a different way. But, you know, I was told I was an abomination, that I was going to go basically to the Mormon version of hell. That I was never going to be able to be with my family after this life, that I was never going to amount to anything, that I was going to be a drug addict, that I was going to end up getting AIDS, that I was going to have no life. Like this is, and they'll come out and say, well, we never said that. I'm like, yeah, but you inferred it a lot. Right.
And how did the how did the Mormon church come about?
The Mormon church came about because of a guy named Joseph Smith that saw God, and God gave him golden plates that were buried in the ground from ancient civilizations, and he translated those plates secretly with some special glasses or translation stones, and he wrote that, and that's how the church started.
And this was back in what, the 1800s or something?
It was back in the 1800s, 1826, I believe. Somewhere around there.
And they're saying you are an abomination by being gay.
Yeah.
So did you leave the church?
I did. I did leave the church. Just taking a little step back, there was a certain point where I had to make a decision whether to go on a mission for the church. You know, I think most people know who the LDS Mormon missionaries are, you know, white shirts, ties, and black name.
The elders, they call some of them.
Elders, yes. I was an elder. And I actually served in the Bangkok, Thailand mission. But I had to make a choice whether to do that or not. And what I decided at that point was, if I go on a mission and I serve God for 2 years and I'm a really good missionary, he'll take this affliction away from me. I will have proven that I don't need to be gay and that I've met my challenge, and it'll go away. So I served for that reason. Do I regret serving? Absolutely not. It was one of the most amazing experiences. I was 19 years old. I got put out into the world. I went to a foreign country. I learned a foreign language, a foreign culture. I got thrown into situations that really taught me to be who I am today and the type of person I have grown to be. I look back at it as a great experience. However, coming home, obviously didn't go away. There was nothing that happened. I went through a few years of struggling, and then I finally came out. I met my husband. I came out in 1996, and then I met my husband in 2005, and we've been together since. And in 2008, we were getting married. We actually got married in Canada, May 22nd, 2008. And at that time was when the whole Prop 8 thing was going on in California. What California was trying to pass. The Supreme Court of California ruled that the amendments blocking same-sex marriage were unconstitutional, and so people were able to get married. And then they came back and blocked it, and then they put a ballot initiative out on it. It was called Proposition 8. The LDS Church got hugely involved with that. If you haven't seen Proposition 8 or Prop 8, the documentary, I would highly suggest you do it. They got very involved with it, very much attacked it. And when I saw what they did, I couldn't be a part of that church anymore. I was complacent at that time. I was like, I don't care if they have my name on the records. If they want to excommunicate me, they can do it. I don't care. At that point, I was like, no, you no longer get the privilege of having my name on your rosters. And I went through the process of having my name pulled off.
Wow. And now you started your own church.
Now I started my own church.
So the Church of Fabulosity, you guys have a podcast.
Yes, we do.
So talk to me about what you talk about in the podcast.
So in the podcast, our podcast is part about spreading the message of the Church of Fabulosity. So a lot of times who we bring on are some of our ministers to talk about what they do and how did they experience fabulosity and how are they spreading the message, and talk about their experiences in life. We brought on some drag queens, like Tara Lipsinki, and Kylie Minono. She's pretty well known, and Bonnie Violet from Idaho. But we also bring on other ministers and other people to share their experiences and talk about what is fabulosity, how do they experience it. So that's really what the podcast is really just talk about that and give people ideas and inspiration, and hopefully we start seeing more people just letting themselves experience joy and happiness, because we as humans, as a modern day society, for some reason has said that's not acceptable.
So, Minister Lala, here's my last question for you, and it's simply this: what to you is fabulosity?
Fabulosity to me, I experience fabulosity in a couple different ways. One of the ways that I experience fabulosity is really through service through others. I was raised, a lot of that was given to me as a child, to always be looking out for the least of these, meaning like those that are suffering or those that are more challenged, to make sure that they're coming along for the ride. So I serve a lot. I sit on a couple different boards, nonprofit boards. I do a lot of fundraising. I try to be the best ally to every community that I possibly can, because that's what brings me fabulous. When I see the impact that I'm making and I hear the feedback from the people that I've touched, it is such a great experience to know that I'm making a difference in this world, which is why doing this, people thought, oh, are you nuts? Why are you doing this? This is going to be a lot of work. And you're not even sure if people are going to like it. I'm like, if I change a couple people's lives, if I affect a couple people, if I touch a couple people's hearts and souls and experiences in this world, it's worth it to me. So really, I experience fabulosity in that way. But the other part is just being me. Like I said, I enjoy expressing myself through different ways that people look at me and they're like, that's odd. And I'm like, that's okay, right? It's like, that's me. And I'm truly just letting myself go. It's like, I in my podcast, I talk about some of the ways I experience fabulosity. I experience fabulosity when I put on a tuxedo. Right? Because I put on that tuxedo and I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, damn, I look good. Right? And I'm not trying to sound conceited.
And your husband says, yes, you do.
Exactly. At least he better. But, I'm not trying to sound conceited or anything, but that's how it makes me feel. And I'm okay with that. I'm like, I feel good. I look good. I pull out my cell phone and I take a selfie or I take a picture of me in the mirror. Right? But then I throw on a pair of ruby red slip high heels, which I've done. I've showed up to events in a full tuxedo and ruby red platform heels. And I feel more empowered. And I feel that much more amazing, and that inner joy is there. Especially sometimes I do feel joy when I know that I've made somebody else think. But those are the ways that I experience fabulosity. And it's such a freeing moment to let yourself just be happy and express yourself and not concern yourself with what others think. If I want to throw on heels, I'll throw on heels. If I want to paint my toenails, which I do, a lot of times I'm changing them throughout the season or based on the holiday, then I will. What's somebody going to say? So, it's just being able to express yourself and be able to feel that. And the more you can do that, the happier you are. And the more you can spread that with others. Right. There's actually this Mormon, poster that they have out there. I remember it says, attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching. And I really do believe that as we spread fabulousness, as we feel and celebrate our own fabulousness and put it out there in the world, others are going to experience it. Others are going to benefit from it. And then it can continue to grow.
Minister Lala, I have to say, well said. Well said. Well said, well said, well said. Well said, well done, well organized. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I encourage everybody to go out and become a minister of the Church of Fabulosity. How amazing is that to tell people that you're a minister of the Church of Fabulosity?
For even more on Minister Lala and the Church of Fabulosity, simply visit churchoffabulosity.org. Up next, the Rainbow Country School for Canadian Gay History. And on today's lesson from activist, author, and historian Tim McCaskill, Canada's gay and lesbian liberation movement of the 1970s.
In the 60s, before the internet, to find each other, queer people needed to actually get together in real space and real time. Since most places didn't tolerate our kind, depending on where you were, your options could be limited. Large cities might have a few specialized commercial spaces, but in the absence of those, it was basically public washrooms, parks, or house parties. They all had their downsides. Commercial spaces required you to spend money, and that's one of the reasons why they were mostly for men. Even in places as big as Toronto, there was seldom more than one lesbian bar at a time. Lesbians earned about 60% of the male wage and probably had more dependents. The economy just wasn't there. The old adage was, gay men go to restaurants, lesbians hold potlucks. Washrooms and parks were also pretty much boys only and could be dangerous, plus parks in the Canadian winter, not so good. You could freeze your willy off. House parties, you needed to know somebody, or know somebody who knew somebody, and so on, and be invited. In terms of commercial life, Montreal had led the pack, developing a Sin City reputation during Prohibition in the U.S. in the 1930s. And where there's sin, there's always a place for us. Toronto the Good and Vancouver took a bit longer, but in 1974, Toronto had enough anonymity and a critical mass to produce a small commercial scene. At first, it was mostly straight bars where we were tolerated in a corner as long as we behaved. Next came a few straight-owned venues that served gay clientele. By the mid-70s, a new class of gay entrepreneurs emerged, and started to open up on Church Street where rents were cheaper. But not everybody lived in Toronto or Montreal. In smaller centres, where businesses couldn't meet community needs, the lesbian and gay liberation movement of the 70s came up with a new model. Defy economics and do it for ourselves. We might not have a lot of capital, but we did have free labor. For example, the Lesbian Organization of Toronto established a non-profit community centre in a ramshackle old Victorian house in 1977. It held dances and brunches and drop-ins and provided meeting spaces and a coffee house and hosted a phone line for a whole generation of women. Loot, as it was known, was following a strategy already developed elsewhere. In Saskatoon, the Zodiac Friendship Society opened its community centre in 1973. Edmonton and Calgary soon followed suit. HALO, the Homophile Association of London, Ontario, started in 1974, and the Halifax Gay Alliance for Equality first began running dances in the Turret in 1976, and later turned that into a community centre. By the end of the decade, there was a network of lesbian and gay groups providing community spaces in dozens of medium-sized centres across Canada, volunteer-run and community-controlled. This is Tim McCaskill, a gay liberation dinosaur from another planet and author of Queer Progress.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. Finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we live in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Agnes. My new record, Magic Still Exists, is out now. You are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.